Right, let's look at some Roman numerals now. So the Romans had numbers. The Romans who lived in Italy thousands of years ago, they had a big Roman Empire. They used numbers, but they didn't use, their number system was not as complicated as ours in some ways, although it will seem complicated when you first look at it. But luckily for us, they didn't use zero, so we don't have to worry about that. They didn't really use negative numbers or decimals, so we don't have to worry about anything like that. We just need to worry about whole numbers, integers. So I'll start off with this little rhyme which I find very useful. I vote extra large Cadbury's dairy milk. That's a little rhyme I like to remember. My math sets normally say this every day, so it becomes completely ingrained in us. I vote extra large Cadbury's dairy milk. I write out in words. I vote. Now, extra doesn't really begin with an X. Extra begins with an E. But we cheat a little bit by making X extra. I vote extra large Cadbury's dairy milk. Just say that a few times. I vote extra large Cadbury's dairy milk. That's how we remember our Roman numerals, because we don't have to write all these words out every time. All we have to write out is this. I vote extra large Cadbury's dairy milk. We just need to write letters. I, V, X, L, C, D, M. That's the only letters that the Romans used, because they used letters for numbers. They didn't actually have numbers like we do. They used letters for numbers, and that's the only letters they ever used. I, V, X, L, C, D, M. Then you go like this. 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. Because it's all about ones and fives for the Romans. So I is 1, V is 5, X is 10, L is 50, C is 100, D is 500, and M is 1,000. So if you say this rhyme, it will tell you what the letters are, because you go I, V, X, L, C, D, M, I vote extra large Cadbury dairy milk, and you just go 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. You put zeros on the end where you need to make these numbers get bigger all the time. So 2 of them get 1 0, another 2 of them get 2 zeros, and 1,000 gets 3 zeros. The Romans didn't have anything bigger than 1,000. So the next step, once you've got the rhyme, there's quite a lot to Roman numerals. The next step is knowing how to write certain numbers. You don't need to know how to write every number to be able to do with Roman numerals. I'm just going to squeeze this on the screen a bit. What you need to know is you need to be able to do 1, you need to know how to go from 1 to 10, and you'll need to know after this, you need to know our 10 times table. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. And you'll need to know how to do your hundreds, because once you can do these, it's quite a lot, but once you can do this, you'll be able to do any number. There won't be anything you won't be able to do after this. So hopefully I'll space it out a bit better now. Normally we should write one number per square, but I have to squeeze this on. Make sure my zeros are closed. So how do we do 1? Well, we have our little rhyme. I'm going to do it yet again. I vote extra large Cadbury's dairy milk. And we go 1, 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 1. I'm doing it in a bit of a rush here, because I don't want you to get too bored of me writing all the time. We've got a rhyme, so you know what every letter is. So we know what 1 is. 1 is I. 2 is I. Makes sense, doesn't it? 3 is I. But the Romans never do they do more than 3 of one letter in a row, so they're not allowed to write 4 I's. Even though I would know what you meant, it's not correct for the Romans. We'll leave out 4 for a minute. 5 we know, because it's written in our rhyme. 5 is V. What the Romans did for 6 is they did V, which is 5, plus I, which is 6. 5 plus 1 is 6, isn't it? Mm-hmm. What they actually do for 4, they actually write 5, but they put a 1 in front. And that means 5 take away 1 is 4. So for the Romans, V is 5, V1 is 5 plus 1, which is 6, and 1V is 5 minus 1, which is 4.
Yeah, I always say that when you're using Roman numerals and you're going for the 1 less, you're saying, use it as a number sentence, 1 less than 5, because the 1 is before the 5.
7's pretty easy, 5, 6, 7. 8's pretty easy, 5, 6, 7, 8. When we get to 9, we have a problem because you can't do more than 3 i's in a row. Let's do 10 first. That's in our rhyme. I vote X rice, caffeine, dairy milk. X is 10. So what is 9? We're going to do 10, and we put a 1 before it. 10 take away 1, which is 9. So this pattern, this exact same pattern happens all the way through the 10s and all the way through the 100s, just using different letters. But you'll see the same pattern. So with the 10s, it's like the 1s, but instead of using i's, it uses x's. Because 10 is x, 20 is therefore 2 x's, and 30 is 3 x's. Just like the pattern with the 1s earlier on, with the i's earlier on. Sometimes I say 1 when I mean I. 40, let's do that in a minute. So 50, that's in our rhyme. This is one I often forget and use my rhyme myself even now to remember 50. 50 is L. If we're going to do 40, what the Romans used to do is they got their 50, they put an X before it, so that means 50 take away 10, which is 40. It's actually XL. People often learn that one XL because it's a famous kind of size of t-shirt. And 60 is L, which is 50, and X makes 60. 70, L, X, X. 50, 60, 70. 80, L, X, X, X. 50, 60, 70, 80. 90 we'll do in a minute. 100 is C from our rhyme. 90 is 100 minus 10. So the X before the C. So you'll see there are a lot of similarities in the pattern between the 1 times table and the 10 times table. Now we'll do this hundreds times table over here. Let's look at our 100 times table for the Romans. C is 100, CC is 200, and CCC is 300. 500 is in our rhyme, D is 500. 600 is DC. 700 is DCC. 800 is DCCC. Let's go back to 400. So what the Romans would do is D for 500, but you have to take off 100, so you have to put it before. Let's do 1,000. M is 1,000. And 900, you put M for 1,000, and you put a C in front of it. CM, that's 1,000 minus 100. So that's a lot to take on board this. This is often a lot to take on board to children at first, but you really do need these 30, I know some of them are the same, for example, 10's on there twice, 100 is on there twice, but you need to be able to put all these numbers into Roman letters to be able to do any number that comes up. Now all this of course is on this little Roman numeral section over in the corner, so we can still see it all, but I wanted to show you how to write it for yourself, or how the Romans came up with these numbers in the first place. So I find it easier to go from English numbers into Roman numbers, because the Romans very much kept their units, tens and hundreds separate. So what you need to do is just find out what 300 is. Now we have a list over here, and 300 is CCC. So you put down what 300 is, then you find out what 20 is. 20 is XX. Then you find out what 4 is, and 4 is 1V, and just write it all in a row like that. Hundreds, tens and units. It always works nicely going from English to Roman. Always works in that order. So with a few examples of this, I don't think you'll have any problem changing English numbers into Roman numbers. Let's do something slightly bigger. The Romans never really they don't go far past 3,000 because you can't have more than 3 M's in a row. So you're never going to get a number bigger than, I can't remember exactly what it is, 3,000 and something. You don't ever have to go bigger than 3,000 or so with Roman numerals. So let's put the units.
3999.
I can't remember what the biggest one you are is.
I suppose you could, couldn't you? 3999 you could do.
You can?
Yeah, because you'd have to go 3,000 and you go 900.
Let's do this.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
cut. Let's do that one after this. So
just for a bit of fun, you know.
yeah. So thousands, 3,000 is 3 M's, 3,000.
Yeah.
200 is 2 C's. 40, this is one that often trips people up to, you learn it. 40 is XL because it's L for 50, take away X for 10, so it's XL. And the units 5 is V.
Can I just add something to this? And this is going to help some of you that maybe struggle with seeing. So you might see 3,245, but you might not see the values separately. I'm a big fan of partitioning myself. So Mr. Still, on the right hand side, you could write the numbers separately down. Yeah, that's it. So you've got 3,000. If you write them if you are struggling to really identify between how to separate the thousands from the hundreds, from the tens, from the units, do what Mr. Sills has done on the right hand side over here. Partition your numbers and separate them completely. So by then, you know those three M's are their 1,000, they're 3,000. You know those two C's are their 200. You know that, which I say 1 minus L, which is 40, and you have your V, which is your 5.
Let's do that difficult one, 3,999, because I honestly can't remember if it's possible or not in Roman numerals, so let's find out. I know 4,000 is not possible, because to do that we would need a letter for 5,000, which they don't have.
Feel free to pause now and see, have a go yourself to see if you can justify that Roman numerals can have this amount.
Yeah, maybe you can try this before us. 3,999. Just before we do this, I know you can't do 4,000 because 4,000 is, you can't have 4 M's in a row.
Yeah.
Me and you know that means 4,000, but it's not the official version. And there is no letter such as a V, which means 5 normally. There's no letter for 5,000.
Right.
So you can't do anything like that. So this could possibly be the biggest thing we can do. Let's see. So we partition this?
Let's partition it so that we can really see the value of each of the place values.
So this all depends on what you want. Some people, you like to see a smaller method. You don't like to see so many numbers written all over the board. So this partitioning you could do if you want to, or you could not do it if you don't need it, It's up to you. But that is how you partition 3,999. I always put my hats on as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we need 3,000 first, which is going to be fine because it's 3 M's.
Mm-hmm.
Now how do we do 900? It's CM. I think Mr. Blom's right about this. How do we do tens? 9 tens, 90 is XC, because 90 is C minus X, which is 90, and units is 9. So this is the biggest number the Romans could write, using these letters. In truth, they did have ways of doing things bigger, which we won't go into today, but this is certainly all you'll need to know in primary school.
Just remember that the smaller value comes first. So for 9, you have the I and then the X, because the I is 1 smaller than the 10. The X and the C, again, the exact same thing, 10 less than the 100. And the CM, which is not centimeters, is the 100 less than 1,000.
Going from Roman numbers into what I usually call English numbers. Let's put CXL. Okay, if you've got this list here especially, it does make everything a lot easier. You may not be able to do that. You may not have the list with you, but you can create this list, you see, by doing the right. I vote extra large Cadbury's Dairy Milk. I have many children who can do this in just over 5 seconds. They can have all these written out and they know exactly what everything is with practice. So practice this, Ryan. I vote extra large Cadbury Dairy Milk. Then you know what all the letters will mean. And it makes a question like this very easy, very attainable, because this is not the hardest thing you'll come across. C, in a rhyme, it tells us that it's 100. This is where I would use partitioning every time myself. So C is 100. We've done C. Sometimes I'll circle it off to show that I've done it. Mm-hmm. Not always. X we have next, but that doesn't really make sense to me because the numbers should be in order of size. So you should start with the biggest numbers, M, D, C, L, X. If they're not in order of size, it means you've got one of these minus things going on where you've got to take something off. So look to see if they're in order of size. Really, I often look for the M's first, see if there's any M's. Then I look for the D's. There's none of either of those, but there is a C. We dealt with the C. Next, there should be an L. Well, there is an L, and it's more important than the X. That means that the X actually goes with the L. It's XL. You might remember that as being 40 from before, because L is 50 and X is 10. 50 minus 10 is 40. I write it like this. You can see that when we add this up, it's going to come to 140. But I do like this way round. Now, Mr. Blom liked to partition when we went from English to Roman, and I'm sure he would partition from Roman to English as well.
Yeah, definitely.
This is the one I would always partition on, because you might think this looks quite an easy question, but there are some very, very tricky ones to come.
Well, again, that's where the biggest problem you're going to have is that you need to practice those where there are smaller amounts before the larger amounts, so that you do that takeaway. Because I can imagine how many children would have written 160 there. Because they see the 10, because they see the 50, and because they see the 100. So just be careful. Have a look at the order. It's very important.
Next, let's see if I can make a question that's going to cause us a lot of trouble. Okay, so how will I do that? MMCM, let's go for XC1X. I'll take the opportunity to yet again write the rhyme.
Come on, you're going to challenge me?
Go on
Am I going to try this one? Based on what you've taught?
Go on then.
Okay. Well, do your rhyme so long.
1 5 1 5 1 5 1. I is 1, V is 5, X is 10, L is 50, C is 100. They get big. They have to get big all the way down to the biggest one, M, which is 1,000. So,
well, luckily, you see, I've got my rhyme there. I've got my setup. I know exactly what each value is worth. So I have 2 M's. So I'm going to write down 2,000 to start. Completely separate from all the other numbers. I like partitioning when it comes to Roman numerals, and I do think you should too. The next is we have CM. Now I would always go and look maybe at 2 at a time, and if the larger number, the larger letter value is in front, then it doesn't really matter. But as you can see, we've got C. So from what Mr. Sewell said is we have 100 and we have M, which is 1,000, but the C is in front of the M. That means that is 100 less than 1,000. So my next amount is going to be 900. And I'm going to write that underneath the 2,000.
make sure you line up down the right.
Absolutely. The following value is X. Now I need to look next to X to see if this is going to be an additional X, an additional 10, or is it going to be 10 less than an amount. And as you can see, next to X is a C. Now a C, if I'm looking down, is worth 100. Now, 10 is obviously worth less than 100, so this is 10 less than 100. That means that the next amount is 90. This is a tricky one, Mr. Sewell. This is a tricky one. I like this one. And I hope that you did a pause and you tried it yourself, because I'm sure you would have done possibly even better than myself. Now, the next value, again, you've done another one where you have a lesser value in front of a larger number. We have IX. Now I is the value of 1 and X is the value of 10, so clearly I is smaller than X, so it is 1 less than 10, which makes 9, which gives us, obviously that's not the answer because we've got all the numbers partitioned. We need to add those numbers up together, which is probably the easiest bit. Is we have 9 units, 9 tens, 9 hundreds, and 2 thousands, which makes the number 2,999.
So just to